Hi, my name is Charlotte, and this channel is about my attempt to become moderately competent at drawing. I have been absent from YouTube for pushing 6 months now, and I would love to say that that's because I've been so busy learning to draw that I just didn't have time to make videos about learning to draw, but that would be a complete lie. I might at some point go into why I stopped drawing and why I started drawing again, but for now the important thing to know is that I stopped drawing at the very beginning of April and only started again in the middle of August. I'm coming back to YouTube now though because I have an update on my figure drawing journey as I recently passed my 300-hour milestone in learning to draw the figure. I went through the backstory of this in a little bit more detail in my 200-hour video, which I'll link below, but the gist of it is this. I started to take learning to draw seriously in the middle of 2020, and in 2021 I decided I wanted to learn to do some figure drawing. Having never really drawn the figure before, or not more than a stick man, for my own entertainment, I decided I would do an hour zero drawing. So I found a reference, I gave myself about a half an hour, and using whatever knowledge I had acquired about drawing at the time, I drew a simple figure drawing. And I decided that I would do the same again each time I hit a 100-hour mark. So I would keep track of my hours, and after 100 hours, I drew this drawing, and after 200 hours I drew this one. Before I show you my 300-hour drawing, I want to talk about the 100 hours I spent working on figure drawing. It took me a total of 89 days to go from 200 to 300 hours of practice, but those 89 days were spread out over 9 months, pretty much in 2 blocks, from January to March and from August until early October. I feel like I learned a huge amount in those 100 hours, but I also think that I took several steps back because of taking those 4 months off in the middle. I definitely think if I had been able to be more consistent, I would have made more progress, and I wouldn't have forgotten things or gotten rusty or any of the things that actually happened to me. I try not to spend too much time thinking about regrets or what if, but it does annoy me at some level to think how much further on I could be now if only I had been able to keep going. The truth is though, I have taken big breaks in every 100-hour block that I've taken so far. And so I kind of want to offer you my case as a counterpoint to all of those YouTubers who yell at us about how we need to be practicing every single day and only consistency will really get you anywhere. Even if you can't commit to drawing every day or every week or even every month in my case, you can still make progress. It might be a lot slower, but it's still progress. So of the things that I worked on over the last 100 hours, I want to pick out 3 that I think had the most impact on me and my figure drawing. And specifically, I want to pick out 3 things that affected my confidence, my speed, and my understanding of the learning process behind figure drawing. So the first of these things is the Love Life Drawing Fresh Eyes Challenge. I was in the middle of this just when I passed over the 200-hour threshold and finished it very early on in this 100-hour block. I have to admit I'm a big fan of the Love Life Drawing YouTube channel, their content, and their platform generally. This course specifically is a short, free course. It's supposed to take you 10 days, and in that time you look at first looking at the body in a series of 2D shapes, and then as a series of 3D volumes. So for me personally, most of the content of this course was actually review. I had heard most of it before. But it really clicked for me, going through the course on this occasion, that you really can represent the human figure using a very limited tool set. And that was really helpful to me. I highly recommend this course, especially if you're fairly near the beginning of learning to draw the figure. I think many people would find it really helpful. And like I said, it is free, so it is risk-free to try it out. The second thing that I did in this 100-hour block was a lot of self-directed gesture drawing, focusing mainly on quite short gestures, usually between 30 seconds and 3 minutes. So in this time, I went from really barely being able to get anything on the page in 30 seconds to drawing much more complicated figures in very little time. I experimented with all kinds of different kinds of gesture practices, including limited line, working with forms, and drawing only with blocks of tone, in this case using Copic markers. Overall, practicing gestures had just a really huge impact on the overall speed with which I draw the human figure, and of course, the pure volume of drawing hundreds of figures helps as well. All that said, I think I lost more of this skill during my hiatus than anything else. Unless I'm practicing consistently, I just can't maintain the skill level required to produce fast gestures that look the way that I want them to. The last thing I did was start to look at anatomy. So this was something where I was going along with consensus. And the consensus is artists need to learn anatomy. There are all these very detailed books, very detailed courses. And I started doing this very much like, well, okay, I'll do this, I guess. I don't really know why though. But as soon as I started looking at it, and I've really only touched on one topic, which is the torso, I started to see why this is so useful. Because the huge complexity of the human body is made so much easier to deal with when that complexity is predictable and comprehensible, because you kind of know what's going on beneath the skin. I don't see myself as being someone who's going to go all in with really in-depth anatomy study, but I can definitely now see the value of doing more anatomy study, and it's on the list of things that I really want to get to for each of the major body parts. So let's look at my 300-hour drawing. I'll put it up with the 200-hour drawing for the most recent comparison. On the one hand, I want to say straight away that I don't think there's a significant improvement in my actual drawing of the human form. The single biggest problem with my 300 drawing is that there are proportion errors. The legs are disproportionately small, and that front leg is very thin compared to the rest of the body. So the whole lower body looks kind of wonky. I'm also still really struggling with the hands and feet. The rendering isn't great, and overall, neither the mark making nor the drawing itself are particularly interesting or creative. I know when people hear me say this kind of thing, they think I'm being really hard on myself or overly analytical. But I think it's really important to say that I'm not looking at this as a piece of art that I labored over. It's a short little drawing I did really as a diagnostic test. It's a stake in the ground for where I am right now, and understanding what I did wrong in this drawing and other drawings that I've done recently will hopefully guide me towards what are the best uses of my time in order to get better and make the actual kind of art that I want to make. The other thing that I want to say is, even though I was just really critical, I actually really like this drawing and I'm really happy with it. And that's for reasons that are just not visible from the finished outcome. And the main win here is the time issue. So let's look back at my previous drawings. My original 0-hour drawing, I set a timer for 30 minutes and then I spent 5 minutes cleaning up the drawing. The 100-hour drawing took about the same time, 35 minutes, but I had actually drawn this same figure 2 or 3 times before I drew this particular drawing. So yeah, this specific drawing took between 30 and 35 minutes, but I had multiple attempts behind me when I started, and I couldn't actually tell you how much time I spent overall on this particular figure. The 200-hour drawing was from scratch, and it took 32 minutes. I spent the first 5 minutes of that time doing some little thumbnails, and then the remaining 27 minutes drawing the final figure. And I really had to work the whole 32 minutes and the whole time in the previous drawings to get to this point. Then we look at the 300-hour drawing. This was my last drawing as a part of a much longer drawing session, and it took 16 minutes exactly. And in fact, in the kind of last few hours running up to the 300-hour mark, I did a lot of drawings that took 5 to 10 minutes in a variety of different circumstances, which, apart from the rendering and getting some of the smaller details in, I took to a remarkably similar level of finish. So that's a huge change in my speed. Some of that is down to pure practice, just the fact that I have done hundreds of figures in short periods of time. But some of it is down to confidence. So confidence for me means that my lines tend to go where I think they're going to go when I put them down. I have a lot more certainty about where the major body masses are and how to position them in space. And I make fewer revisions of these as I develop the figure further. All of my previous drawings included multiple erasings and redrawings of various body parts. In some cases, so much that I wore the surface off the paper. In this most recent drawing, I don't think I used the eraser at all. When I look back at those recent drawings that I just showed you, I can only find one really visible use of the eraser anywhere. I will say, of course, the flip side is that I'm very confident when I'm wrong. So there is a kind of dark side of that confidence. There is an argument that for better comparison purposes, I should have continued on with this drawing for the full 30 minutes that I used on the other drawings. But there actually was no point in spending a half an hour on this specific drawing, because there's not much that I could add in that extra time that would have improved the outcome. For example, I could have spent the extra 15 minutes doing more nuanced rendering, or I could have erased and redrawn particularly the feet and the hand, but better rendering would not have fixed the fact that there's a big problem with the legs, and I didn't draw the hands and feet badly by chance. This is the best job I can do right now. So erasing and redrawing potentially multiple times with the same limited skill set probably wouldn't have actually improved the drawing all that much. The fact is, the things that were weak about that 300-hour drawing would have been best fixed by redrawing the figure entirely, and I actually had time to do that if I'd thought of it. Of course, the ideal situation would be for me not to have made that error to begin with, and I will be working on my proportions and making sure that I get that more correct in future. It's kind of a theme in my work at the moment that the legs are too short. The second best outcome would have been if I had noticed the error before I moved from the light sketch to starting to put down more finished marks. But I was absolutely blind to the problem while I was working on it. It was only when I stepped away at the end that I went, oh, I've messed up the legs. Darn. I think there's something to learn there in terms of stepping back at some point earlier in the process and going, does this figure make sense overall as a whole? So could I have done more and better in the full 30 minutes? Maybe, but not by spending the full 30 minutes on this drawing. So overall, I don't think if you look purely at the output, the finished drawings, that you're going to be struck by some amazing improvement I've made between 200 and 300 hours. But that's actually hiding some genuine improvements that I've experienced and that I think are actually really important. If nothing else, being able to draw faster and more confidently means that I can get a lot more volume done in the same amount of practice. And for me, I definitely think that a lot of volume is one of the best ways for me to get better. Along with doing a lot of practice and thinking about proportions and process in the way that I've already spoken about, the things that I want to focus on in the next 100 hours, including looking in more detail at the hands and feet, and also generally looking more at anatomy. So I'm really hoping that when I get to the 400-hour mark, hopefully in far less than 9 months, I'll have more and different progress to show for my work. So if you made it this far, thank you very much for watching, and thank you in particular to anybody who decided to subscribe during my very long absence from YouTube. I hope you decide to stick around now that I'm back and posting more. I will be back next week to talk about art some more, but in the meantime, I hope you all have a great creative week. Bye for now.